people a few minutes to join. We're also live streaming on Facebook. We have more than 300 people signed up for today's webinar, so I'm going to give the numbers a chance to rise. People a minute to log in, and we'll get started. In case you're just logging in, you're in the right place. This is the Asking the Hard Questions about the Memorial Day Ceremony webinar. We're just giving people a moment to join, and we'll get started. Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Shiri Orion. I'm the Executive Director of the American Friends of the Parent Circle Families Forum. And I want to thank my colleagues from American Friends of Combatants for Peace for also co-sponsoring, co-hosting this event today, and most importantly, the joint Israeli-Palestinian Memorial Day ceremony that will take place on April 13th. We'll give more information about that shortly. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. We have an hour together today. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it later and share with more people. You can ask your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom, and we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. We'll be providing a number of links in the chat, important information that you'll need, so be mindful of that. I want to welcome two very important people, Robbie Damlin, who is a bereaved member of the Parent Circle and the spokesperson of the Parent Circle, and Osama Elawat, who is a member of Combatants for Peace, an activist with Combatants for Peace. Robbie joins us from Israel. Osama joins us from Palestine. Before we get into the difficult questions about the ceremony, and before we hear from Robbie and Osama, the main reason that we are holding this event today is because we are eager for all of you to join us on one of the most important days for both of our organizations in the year, which is on April 13th. April 13th is in Israel known as Yom HaZikaron. For our organizations and for hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, it's known as the Joint Israeli and Palestinian Memorial Day Ceremony. And together, hold on a second.
Hi, sweetheart. How was art?
Sorry. Together we mourn those that have been lost on both sides of the conflict. We acknowledge that the pain is a shared pain, whether you're Israeli or Palestinian, and we also say that violence is not an act of fate, that this is not inevitable, that there doesn't need to be any more loss of lives. Osama, we'd love to hear from you first. If you can just tell us a little bit about yourself and why you joined Combatants for Peace. I just want to, we have somebody else joining you on your link, so hopefully that won't happen again.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us and creating this event. It's very important. I'm very touched. My heart is knocking really very fast. I can feel it. I'm always touched by this day and by this ceremony, this event. It's very important for me, like anyone else. I am Osama Aliwat, originally from Jerusalem. My family are refugees all around the world. I live in Jericho, not in Jerusalem. Because of the Israeli rules, my family are not allowed to live in Jerusalem anymore. I grew up with no knowledge about the conflict. When I was a kid, the only thing I used to know about Israelis are full armed soldiers in front of my school, in our streets, walking during the night in our streets, knocking our doors, taking my father out. to clean and sweep the streets and the graffiti on the walls against the occupation. I grew up with a lot of fears, and somehow these fears turned to hate for everything called Jews, actually, not Israelis, because all what I knew about these soldiers, they were Jews. When I used to ask my mom about the soldiers, when I used to come running back from my school, terrified and crying from the tear gas, and I asked her about the soldiers, she used to say, there are the Jews. So the first image in my life for the Jewish people, which was taken by or created by the Israeli army in my mind, that was Jews are bad people and they are terrifying us. I started to think about revenge when I was 14. I started my revenge as a peaceful resistance. I started to write graffiti on the walls, hanging Palestinian flags in our neighborhood. It wasn't political for me. It was just my daily life. That's how I used to live. And that's all what I knew about this. I was arrested, and in jail, I learned everything bad about Israel, about Israelis. I was released and I joined the Palestinian police after, because I wanted to have a weapon and to be strong and to protect my family and my neighbors and my sisters at home. And after 2 years of being in the police, one of my friends was killed by the Israeli army by mistake, according to them. And I was mad and I wanted to resist again. I kept resisting until 2007. Then I stopped by orders from the Palestinian Authority that we are not using violence anymore. So I was mad at the Palestinian Authority. Somehow I went with one of my friends to a peace meeting, and I was wondering, who are the peace people? Who are the people I'm gonna meet over there? And I was surprised. Some of the people were wearing yarmulkes on their heads. And when I saw them, I stepped back and I was very mad at my friend. And I told him, are you bringing me to talk to Jewish people? And he said, of course, some of the Jews believe in peace. And I said to him, what kind of peace you talking about? They killed their own prime minister because he wanted to make peace. And I don't think there's any of them really want peace. And luckily it was stormy outside and I stuck in Everest Hotel, and I was surprised by hearing some Israelis seeing our pain, talking about our pain, resisting against it, talking about the war crimes in Gaza, talking about occupation and how they don't agree with it. That was the first crack in my mind about there is something else, there is another story and I don't know it. And I started to search and I started to go to more and more meetings and I met a lot of Israelis. By then I decided to create a group to bring Israelis and Palestinians together. So my first project was group called Visit Palestine. It was a group that brought bring Israelis to West Bank, to the Palestinian cities, for many reasons. One of the reasons is to explain to them how life under occupation looks like. The second thing is to allow Palestinians to meet Israelis, because the Israeli government are doing their best to keep us divided, and also to allow Palestinians to see Israelis as a human being and not as full armed soldiers. After this, I heard about Combatants for Peace, and I was really happy to find my home, to find this umbrella that I wanted to be part. And I joined Combatants for Peace 7 years ago as a coordinator for Jericho Jerusalem group. And now I am the coordinator of the education session in Combatants for Peace.
Thank you, Osama. We're really glad that you found your home with Combatants for Peace and that you're here with us today. Robbie, what about you? Tell us the circumstances that brought you to the parent circle.
Well, I was just listening to Osama and thinking to myself, that we come from such completely different worlds, and yet we are so alike. You know, I was brought up in South Africa. I was in the anti-apartheid movement and almost jumped from the frying pan into the fire when I came to Israel. And but I'd always had a liberal part of my life and believed in social justice and democracy and was in the anti-apartheid movement. But that was just a very small part of my life. Then I came to Israel and I had two sons. And David, my second son, was killed by a Palestinian sniper. And it is almost as if my whole background was preparing me for this, because I said, you may not kill anybody in the name of my child, when they came to tell me that this is what happened. So obviously, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and my own environment growing up had prepared me to react perhaps in a way which is so completely different from so many others who seek revenge and are looking in a sense of hatred because of not knowing. And so a religious Jewish man came to see me after I spoke at a huge demonstration to get out of the occupied territories. And he invited me to a weekend in East Jerusalem with other bereaved Palestinian and Israeli families. And I went, and I remember sitting on this round table and looking into the eyes of the Palestinian mothers and realizing that we shared the same pain, and realizing what a powerful force we could be if we stood on a stage and said in the same voice, stop the violence. And so that has been the mantra that I've lived with for I don't know how many years now. It seems forever, but it's a 24-hour a day belief. And I'm grateful that I found this organization, because the Parent Circle has given me a framework in which to express all of the things that I've wanted to say, perhaps all of my life, but now in a very, very powerful way. Who gets a platform like this to be able to share their stories and their pain? And let's face it, the most powerful thing that we have, Osama, you and me, is our stories. And if we can tell them to these kind of people, in whatever circumstance, I don't care where it would be. It could be to 3 people or 30,000, it's irrelevant. It's the opportunity to touch somebody's heart. And now, because of what is happening all around the world, because there are so many people who have lost their lives through the pandemic, I'm thinking to myself, wow, if all these people who are on this webinar would actually talk and reach out to people that they know have lost and encourage them to come to the ceremony that we're going to tell you about, maybe they will find some hope. And perhaps by example of how you can take something that's so terrible and turn it into something for making change in the world. And so that's why I'm here tonight. And thank you, Shiri, and American Friends and Combatants. Combatants and American Friends, I think, are the last of the Mohicans that are left that really can work together and are very much in tune.
Yes, it's been it's exciting to work together with another organization, I think, to put on such a special event. And we're going to put in the chat the link to register for the ceremony. So if you have not yet registered for the ceremony that's going to take place on April 13th, please do so. Robbie, what you were saying about standing on a stage, people who are so different, who come from such different backgrounds, like you and Osama and all the other Israelis and Palestinians that share this special day, is so powerful. And yet this day has a lot of controversy around it. Just today, I saw an article in Haaretz that said that there's a billboard, an advertiser that will not allow, in Israel, that will not allow Combatants for Peace and Parent Circle to promote the ceremony on the billboard. Is that, is that freedom of speech? Is that infringing on freedom of speech? Is that, why is that such a problem? And every year there's some sort of controversy. We've had to go to the Supreme Court to fight when the Palestinians were not given permits to come into Israel. I think that I want to get into some of the tough questions because some of the really sensitive points about the Memorial Day ceremony have actually really good answers, I think. So I think that the first really tough question that we get a lot is why on Memorial Day? And I know that there's even some, excuse me, internal discussion year after year of why do we do our joint Memorial Day on Israel's Yom HaZikaron? Can't we do it on a different day? Why do it on Memorial Day when other families might be offended by this? Well, what do you have to say for that?
Me or Osama?
Why don't you start, Robbie?
Well, you see, I think that every family has the right to commemorate their child in the way that they see fit, but they should also accord me the same courtesy. And so I can't think of a better way to actually commemorate David's name by standing on the stage with a Palestinian and hearing stories of loss together. Because after all, let's face it, when you go to a funeral and you stand over a grave and you cry, those tears are the same color. When you meet each other, you recognize the shared pain. And if we can put this example into a population that has never been exposed to the so-called other story or narrative, wouldn't that be an extraordinary opportunity? And because it is this day, and because I find that many, many ceremonies don't talk to me because there is a certain sense of communal mourning where you become property. I don't like going to the cemetery. I go because of David's friends. But I go to the cemetery and there's always a politician that comes and pontificates about how remarkable it is to give your life and how wonderful. And I believe in the sanctity of life. And so for me, this whole huge ceremony that we have, I remember the very first one, there was hardly anybody there. And the Palestinians didn't come. So I told the story of Nasra because I thought it was important. So we must give each other some kind of leeway to mourn in the way that we see fit. And anybody that comes to that ceremony must be moved, even the hardest of hearts, because it's the first time that they are exposed to the heart of the other.
I can appreciate that. Osama, do you want to add anything to that?
Thank you, Robbie. I don't know if I can add after Robbie a lot. I just want to tell Robbie that even though you don't know me well, I know you well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really sorry that I celebrated the killing of your son by then, because the hate was controlling me and I didn't know you and I didn't know your son as a person. The pain and the hate was controlling us. And according to the question, I don't think anyone can tell the bereaved families when and where and how they can mourn their beloved ones. They have the choice to choose the day, the time, and the place. And that's why we are doing it in this day. I wanted to hug Robbie and be with her on the same day when she is mourning her son, when she's in pain, when she's in this big pain, which should be, this day should be difficult for everyone. And for me, being together, same like I mourn my friends, gives a big hope and a big change, and that relieves my heart. I used to refuse taking part in this ceremony because I used to see the symmetry over there. But now I think that's how, when we just get rid of our nationalities and political status and think as human beings. Thank you.
Bassam always says he lost his daughter, and he always says, One Israeli killed my daughter, not the whole Israeli nation. And I can say the same. One Palestinian killed my son, but not the whole nation. And I can't think of a more important way to bring hope to the general public than to see this extraordinary vision of people. I mean, 200,000 people were at the last ceremony and came away with this sense of there is hope. And if you don't have hope, you will never have peace. It's part of the equation.
Osama, you brought up something that is also very controversial, and that's about the symmetry, right? That it's not a symmetrical conflict. And yet some people believe that by bringing Israelis and Palestinians together on a joint Memorial Day, then you're saying that there is some symmetry. So the question is that how can you compare the loss of an occupying army to those people who are fighting for freedom, right? That's what many people ask us. It's not an equal conflict. One side is the oppressor and the other side is oppressor. One side is the oppressor and the other side is the oppressed. So you're creating a sense of a false equality between the two sides. How do you respond to that?
From my side, as a Palestinian who still live under the occupation and under military rules, I will say that I do not compare. No one of us is comparing between the occupier and the people who are living under the occupation. There is nothing to compare there but the pain and the loss. There is no difference between the pain on the Jewish side, on the Israeli side, and the Palestinian side. As Robbie said at the beginning, there is no difference between the tears of the Jewish and the Palestinian mother, father, families. They all lost their beloved ones. And we are not comparing, but we are comparing the pain, we are comparing the loss, we are comparing this big suffering for the both sides, for the both families, but not the occupier and the people who are living in the occupation.
Just think what a privilege it is to sit in the same Zoom and gloom together and be able to talk in the same voice. And I'm so moved by that because I think that is the essence of what we want. It's not a question of comparison of suffering. How can I ever compare my very free life with a people that have no freedom of movement, that are under occupation? That is nothing to do with the ceremony. That is a fight that we fight all year long. This is for us to come and touch the hearts of even the hardest of characters. I wish all those remarkable politicians that every year fight us, or the man that made the billboards. In fact, I'm going to look for him. I would like to invite him to come to the ceremony to see how stupid it is not to open this up to the whole world. This isn't a local message. The message that we bring is for the whole world. It isn't just for you and me. No, this is something that can be an example for all of the polarized countries all over the world. And I am so grateful that I have this opportunity to be a part of something like your transformation, Osama. That is extraordinary. Can you imagine how, if you were still in the sense of hate, how ill you become, how angry you are, and you've managed to cope with that? That doesn't mean that you've become some sweet guy who agrees with everything. No, I don't agree with the occupation. I don't agree with anything that has to do with that. And I don't agree with violence. But this is one special evening when we show the world what is possible when we see the humanity in each other.
So last year there were 200,000 people who joined us online. Even before COVID, the number of people joining the ceremony was growing every year. I think the last time we had an in-person ceremony, we had more than 10,000 people in Tel Aviv at the ceremony, Israelis and Palestinians. This year it'll be live broadcasted again on April 13th. We'll send the link to register. in terms of the numbers and who we invite to the ceremony, there's always the question of, do we allow families of what Israelis call terrorists to participate in the ceremony? Families of people that many on the Israeli side would consider involved in terrorist acts. Do we invite them to the ceremony? And if so, isn't that really desecrating the memory of fallen soldiers?
For me personally, if somebody is willing to come to this ceremony and sit and identify with me, what more could I ask? Because that means that that family has gone through a transformation of nonviolence. Look at Mandela, Nelson Mandela, great example, sat in jail for 20 years, but who prevented a bloodbath when he came out of jail? This very same man. People can change. If we don't believe that, we shouldn't be doing this work. And I believe in the transformation of human beings. And I welcome anybody who is willing to align with nonviolence and with a framework for a reconciliation process.
Yeah. For me, I'm confused about who's the terrorist here. The one who's terrifying people with all kinds of weapons, or the people who are living unarmed under military rules and military occupation? And I heard this say a long time ago about resisting, saying, your terrorist is my freedom fighter. And this is all around the world. Even the Zionists, when they came to this land, the British government consider a lot of them as terrorists. And now the Israeli people celebrating Haganah and Estel, and even Yitzhak Shamir was on the blacklist of the British Army, and he was prime minister. So I don't know who's the terrorist here. Christine Saada or Abir Aramin or Aisha Robbie or Nadim Nawawre or Iman Hijjo or Ala Mahfouz, or it's a collective punishment. For me, the terrorist is the one who's terrifying people, because terrorism came from the word terror, and everyone terrifying people, either he's Palestinian or full armed soldier with a uniform, they are the terrorists. People who are fighting for their freedom, in my eyes, are not terrorists, even though I don't agree in any form of violence. We can fight against this occupation in a peaceful way, and the real terrorist in this whole story is the occupation itself.
So then on the flip side, Osama, how can we honor and mourn for soldiers who are part of an occupying force and are occupying other people? When a soldier who's upholding an occupation, how can we be justified in honoring him or her?
But who are we honoring? Those that have died? Are we talking about that? Or are we talking about, so if we're talking about soldiers that died, I think we've answered that question by very openly saying that we honor everybody on this particular day. We are not making political manipulations. We are not making comparisons of suffering. This is a day to recognize the humanity in the other, to bring hope. Please invite all your friends who have lost people. I know I sound like a mantra, but I know that this will be so important for them, because it shows that actually you will learn to live with this pain and with it next to you, but you will also be contributing something to the world if you use your grief to make a change in the world.
For me, I'm actually very, very, really surprised by us calling people names. This is a soldier, and this is a terrorist, and this is a Palestinian. And sometimes we just forget that we are all human beings, and we are there to mourn human beings and their families. We are there to mourn, as I said before, the pain and the lost. Who cares which religion and what colors we have? We all are paying the same price. Actually, I see now Sorry for the siren. It's Corona siren to stop working. So if we can wait a second, let's take it as a siren for our beloved ones. Thank you. So I'm not there to, as I said before, I'm not there to mourning any occupier or to mourning anyone. I'm there to mourn human beings first. We have to remember all the time that the people who get killed in this conflict are a human being. And every human being has mother and father and friends and family and a classmate and lover. He's or she is important for all of them. And mourning them is very important for us and for them. And if we didn't mourn human beings, actually, we are losing our humanity by seeing people according to their religions or their colors. I think we all are paying this price, this big price of the occupation, and we all have to sit and mourn and remind ourselves that we are paying a big price for this conflict. We are also at the same time mourning the price we are paying. And I'm really sorry for every Palestinian and every Israeli lost their kids or their beloveds during this conflict.
You know, a lot of people wonder if organizations like Combatants and Parent Circle, by holding the joint Memorial Day, if we are politicizing this day and we're turning this sacred, what is, you know, a very sacred, solemn day in Israel into an act of politics, an act of resistance, and creating an atmosphere of contempt.
Well, if this is politics, alavai, this politics would last for the whole year and not just for one night, because there's no manipulation in what we are doing. And any peace movement is political, full stop. But it doesn't mean that we are using this as a platform. We have the whole rest of the year to put all our political views on the road. But this is something else. And this night is nothing to do with creating any kind of political manipulation. Certainly not from what I know.
I told you these questions are going to be hard. Now I'm gonna.
I want to have answer. I want to answer. I don't see any political thing in the whole event. Actually, the only political thing I see in this, when the prime minister preventing Palestinians of going with Israelis to be there in Tel Aviv. That's how they make it a politic. From our side, we are bringing people to turn this big pain into hope, to change this big pain to hope, to show people that we got together, we can make change. Together, we can see each other as human beings. And I don't know where is the political side in this. I actually respect everyone opinion. But for me, I don't see, I respect their opinions, and I don't know why they're attacking us. I don't understand how people want us, why people want us to stuck in the past, to stuck in this circle of hate. We are planting seeds of hope. What are you talking about? All what we are doing is we are trying to bring the families who are suffered from this thing to come together and to say there is another way, to say to say we are not taking part of this anymore. It was alternative Memorial Day, and we make it a joint Memorial Day. We are not giving alternative to anyone. As I said before, no one has a moral authority to tell the bereaved families where and when and how to mourn their beloveds, because they are the ones who paid the biggest price.
Actually, I've got a great idea how to turn the ceremony into something amazingly political.
Uh-oh.
Why doesn't everybody that's watching us take a recording and send it to their congressperson? And why don't we send it to all the ministers in parliament in Israel? And maybe just some of them might watch a little bit and have some kind of enlightenment that there is another way. So if you want us to be political, I'd love you to do that. And that would be a really nice gesture.
Yeah, send them an invitation.
I just want to add a little something that since I was born in this conflict, I find out last year that we are fighting over who's more victim than the other since the beginning, and we ignoring each other's stories, each other narratives, and that's really bothered me, because peace is the place where two pains, two stories, two narratives can meet and accept and live together. And that's what we are doing in the Memorial Day. And I'm proud of myself to be part of this.
Me too, Osama. I'm going to take questions now from the audience. So people who want to ask a question, please put it in the Q&A box. The first question came from Ben. He's asking a question to Robbie. Robbie, what is the reaction in Israel to the joint memorial ceremony? How much support does it get, and what are the critics saying?
Well, it varies. You know, it started off with something like 200 people coming, and it was not exactly very popular because people were never exposed to anything like this. And slowly, slowly over the years, more and more people came because they found a certain solace and hope in coming to these ceremonies. It was very different from standing and having a siren and then everybody crying and going away even more miserable than when you came. We want you to go away from this ceremony with a sense of joy and hope, because there is something different. So for me, it's the best way that I can possibly think to put myself in the ceremony on Memorial Day. And I wish I didn't have to go to all these other ceremonies run by all kinds of people who have vested political opinions.
Also, I want to add to this question. I have a lot of Israeli friends who really want to join. The problem is I was the coordinator of the Memorial Day twice, 2017, 2018. And most of these people, unfortunately, are terrified, are afraid. They attacked us. I was beaten in front of the Memorial Day, in front of the police. And the police didn't do anything to help me. They refused to give us any hold, any place to make our ceremony in it. And we did it outside in the nature with a lot of police. And we have to pay to the police and we have to pay to everyone in order to make it. And we make it happening. And we were attacked many times. So I think a lot of Israelis would love to join this Memorial Day if it was easier to them and they don't get attacked. The brave families were attacked in front of my eyes by a bunch of racist people standing outside, and the police didn't do anything. Thank you.
But I think now it's much safer, and so anybody can come. And I promise you, those who watch it on Zoom, on a webinar or on Zoom, will definitely come in person next year. For me, that is understood.
Osama, there's a question for you about, not specifically about Memorial Day ceremony, but about your life and about how your family and your community reacted when you joined Combatants for Peace. Did they see this as normalization?
Actually, we misunderstand the word normalization and we are using it around every day. I don't know what is normalization. Normalization is to normalize the unnormal thing. And I'm not bringing products from the settlement to normalize the unnormal thing. What I'm doing is I'm resisting with my Israeli friends, partners, brothers and sisters against this occupation, which is endangering my life and their life. And I don't see where is the normalization there. My family at the beginning refused it, not because of the normalization, They refused it because they were terrified that I'm gonna be jailed because of my opinion. Because there is no law here. Israel can keep me up to 3 years in jail without going to trial, without any court. It's called, I will be administrative prisoner. So my family were really terrified that I'm gonna go to jail. My friends and Palestinians are disappointed from the whole peace agreement. I myself supported the peace agreement at the beginning. 70% of the Palestinians were supporting the peace agreement. Then after all these years of peace, and Israel was taking lands piece by piece, people don't believe in it. But I think a lot of people also appreciate it. We have done a lot of lectures, a lot of talk. We brought people together, and that's the most important thing. And bringing people together is our goal. According to Mahmoud Darwish, as he said, when he was in love with Tamar, the Jewish woman, you can call him normalizer now. When she asked when we are going to meet, he said after a year and the war. Then she asked, when does the war end? He said, the time we meet. So what we are trying to do here is to meet in order to stop this crime against both of our peoples. There is no normalization in it. And as Gandhi said, first, they're gonna ignore you. Second, they're gonna laugh at you. Then they're gonna attack you. Then you win.
Someone wants to know, she's asking anonymously, and I think this is a tough question. Does someone have to agree that Israel is an occupier to be acceptable to you? And I think she might also mean, do we have to agree that Israel is an occupier to join the ceremony?
You asking me?
Whoever wants to go first.
Yeah, I think you have to agree that we all are human beings to join the ceremony. You have to agree that the Palestinians lost, the Palestinian blood is not justified, and the Israeli blood is not justified. There is no blood justified in religions or in human being rights or anything. That's all what we know. We don't need your political opinion to join us, to be part of us. You just come and be with us and support us, and then we're gonna talk about the rest.
Actually, I invite every settler. I would think that would be, for me, the most joyous occasion if all the settlers would actually open up this 13th of April ceremony and understand who their neighbors are. Because the fact is that we don't know each other. And maybe through understanding a personal narrative, by listening to Lila standing on the stage and talking about her loss and her road to transformation, maybe that might just touch something in somebody's heart and they would have the dignity. You see, we have to give people dignity. And yes, I don't like labels. If a settler wants to come to a dialogue meeting, welcome. For me, anybody who is willing to listen is a customer.
Since this is a webinar about hard questions, I'm going to give you this one, which I think is a hard one. It's from Nabil. She says, I'm sorry, I do not agree with honoring everyone. If you're willingly and knowingly oppressing and killing others, there's no reason to mourn you. Should we have mourned the Nazi army soldiers or the ones that participated in death camps? I do not think so.
Nabil?
Nabil.
Nabila or
Nabil.
a man?
I don't know. N-A-B-I.
I told you, I think I said somewhere along the line, we're not in the business of comparison of suffering. This is an evening about people who lost. And whatever you might feel about somebody whose child was killed because he went to reserves even if he didn't want to. And this is the story of my son, who was called to go to reserves and came to talk to me and said, I don't want to serve in the occupied territories. And he said that if he didn't go, what would happen to his students? Because he was teaching philosophy to kids that were going to be inducted into the army. And if he didn't go, what would happen to his soldiers? Because he was the officer. And if he did go, he would treat people with dignity, and then so would all his soldiers. And I was filled with a sense of dread. And he went. And about 3 years after he was killed, I was sitting in the American embassy, and there was a Palestinian in the audience listening to me, and I could see he wanted to talk to me. And eventually he came to say to me, look, I went through that checkpoint the day before, and your son, you couldn't miss David, he was very tall, came to the car and said, I have to look at your papers. It's my duty. I'll do it as fast as possible. It's like paying income tax. And they got into a conversation. And the Palestinian man said to me, you know, the next day when I heard your son was killed, I was so sorry. Do you understand that that is the essence of the work that we do in the parent circle? It's that essence when both of these people recognize the humanity in the other. And Nabil, if you would go along that path, it would make your heart much easier.
Osama, did you want to add to that?
I can't add after Robbie again. She's expert in this question, but I will say to Nabil that when you ignore other people's pain, don't expect from them to see your pain. Robbie, who lost her son, is fighting for my rights. And because of her, and because of her pain, and because of all the bereaved family pains, they came, even though they came and they support us and they stand with us, they are not more human than me. And I will mourn their beloved too, as human beings, as victims of the same system.
And Nabil is now responding, I'm with you 100%. That is, I agree 100%.
So wherever you live, Nabil, once you've finished with all this corona and we all are vaccinated to, I don't know, to the extent where we can meet, we often are, I believe you must be in America, but, or maybe not. If you are, then you should come to one of the lectures. I'd like to meet you. Thank you for being honest and making that comment.
To still take a little break from the hard questions, there's an easy question about whether the memorial, whether the Memorial Day will be held live this year or only by Zoom because of Corona.
You answer.
I'll answer. So if I understand correctly, there's going to be a small live ceremony for a small group of people, but that everybody is invited to watch the live broadcast. And after the ceremony, there will be breakout rooms where you can have more, intimate conversations with some of the bereaved members and the activists from Combatants for Peace. So, according to COVID lexicon, it will be a hybrid model this year, and hopefully next year we'll go back to normal. Although it's really, for us in the US and all over the world, it's such a privilege to be able to watch and be with you. It really feels like we're a part of the ceremony because it's live and because it's subtitled in English so we can understand and follow along and really be a part of this moving experience. So I think we have time for just a few more questions, so feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Let's see.
I saw a question about Islam. I didn't read the question, but I read the word Islam, so I would love to hear the question.
Let me see, I'm looking for the question about Islam. There's a question about Muslims. For those of us who are not in Israel nor Palestine, is there a role we can play from where we are to bring Israelis, Palestinians, and Jews and Muslims together? Is that the question you saw?
I don't know. Never mind. It's okay. You can ask any question. I didn't know what was the question exactly.
There was another question. Can we have 2 Memorial Days? Another one on a choice of a Muslim day. That's another Muslim question.
I don't know why people always want to divide us. We are trying to be united. Even in the pain, you don't want us to be united. Guys, why we have to be separated all the time? A Palestinian Memorial Day, an Israeli Memorial Day, how this can bring us together as long as we're separating even our being.
There's a college professor here who is teaching about the conflict to college students. And as the most recent Israeli election results show, peace is far, far away from the top agenda. How do we stay hopeful under these circumstances?
I think looking at two people who've taken off an hour of their lives to be with you tonight should give you some hope. And we cannot give up. I cannot afford to give up. I cannot look at my grandchildren in the eye and think that I did nothing. And so whatever it is and whosever heart we can change, I'm grateful for that. And I will never give up. And I'm quite sure that Osama will not either.
Someone posted what
There
it
is
said.
no, I want to say there is no way back to give up. And we as people, we don't need a political agreement to live in peace. This is our choice. This is our voice. Peace started from me, not from the politicians over there. And I decided to live in peace with Robbie and with my Israeli partners. And I don't care about the Israeli elections or the Palestinian elections. This is our decision. We make it, and we made it, and we're gonna stand behind it. And as Robbie said, if we didn't succeed, at least we will be honored to tell our children and our grandchildren in the future that we were not sitting silent while people were killing each other. We made change. We tried to make change. If this change didn't happen today, I will be honored again to be one of the people who planted this seed of hope and peace for the new generation.
And by the way, I mean, everybody who's on this, one of the sad parts about webinars is you've no idea who you're talking to. But I think if you are mainly in the States, you certainly can always be in touch with the American friends and know when we are coming, because we are often in the States. Just all get vaccinated. I'm all vaccinated up, but nowhere to go. So get yourselves vaccinated, and also try to ask your congressman to force Israel to vaccinate all of the Palestinians. It is immoral, illegal, and stupid not to. I had to get that plug in, I'm sorry. I know it's not about that, but it's very important.
There's actually a question about that, but before I go to the question, Osama, somebody typed in what you saw about Islam. It was a teaching of Islam. Somebody had typed in the chat, and it says, be like a flower that gives its fragrance even to the hand that crushes it.
Again,
that's in the book that's in that book of flowers that we made for Kamala Harris.
I don't understand the question.
It wasn't a question. It was a quote that somebody put, or something from the teachings of Islam. The teaching is, be like a flower that gives its fragrance even to the hand that crushes it, by Imam Ali.
I know a lot about Islam, and I'm surprised that people use Islam. This is will say it, but I heard a lot of things about Islam, about, like, when I was young, I heard a lot of things about Jews and about Christians and about how we have to respect other people's religions. And in fact, we are not doing it. In Islam, we say, يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا. We created you from a male and a female, and we made you nations and races to meet. And they didn't mention to fight. So that is my Islam. My Islam is mercy. My Islam is love. And, you know, like in Judaism, I'm sure there is a lot of mercy and love in Judaism, and a lot of people are using it on the other way. Yes. So thank you for the comment.
The question about the vaccine is about, somebody's asking about travel permits. We're not doing a joint live ceremony this year because of COVID, but the question is the government using the pandemic and lack of equality in vaccine delivery to be occupied as an excuse to limit permits? So the answer is, we're not doing a joint live ceremony this year, so that the question is not exactly relevant, but there is a lot to be said about vaccine delivery and how that's impacting our ability to work together in general. You guys want to
Yeah.
say that?
Yeah, I want to say that since Corona started, I didn't get permit to go to Israel, you know, since March last year. They give permits to everyone, to the slaves, to the workers, to the drivers, to the cleaners, to everyone, because they all are okay. They don't have Corona. The only ones who can bring Corona from Palestine to Israel, even though the numbers there are higher, they are the peace activists. So Israel is using every possible way to keep us separated. It's not only about the Memorial Day. This is a policy in Israel. And I want to say one thing before we finish. I was in America many times, actually like 4 times. Last time I didn't succeed to come in, and hopefully because America is also, Trump used the same system. Since they knew I'm Combatants for Peace, I'm going to talk about peace and peaceful resistance, they didn't let me in. So please feel free to join us on the Memorial Day. Please support us. We can't survive without your support. We can't survive. We can do a lot of work on the ground, but we still need you to be with us, to support us, to donate to us, and follow us, and keep watching what we are doing on the ground. American Friends of Combatants for Peace. The link will be shown. You can find it on Facebook and everywhere. Thank you for your support.
Thank you, Osama. Robbie, do you have anything you want to say before we have to say goodbye?
I always have something to say, but actually, I think we've said whatever needs to be said, and just let us all respect each other. Whatever view you have, you can listen to me, you needn't agree with me, but let's listen with empathy, because that's a message that the whole world needs to hear. And I really hope you will join us. And I really hope that you will speak to bereaved families around you and get them to join the ceremony too. I want them to get the solace of understanding that there is hope.
I want to say one word. I want to say thank you, Robbie, and all my Israeli friends for showing me as a Palestinian and my kids the other face of Judaism, not the face of the occupation. Thank you for protecting your people much more than the full armed soldiers. I was not willing to give up fighting against the Jewish people before I met you. I was not willing to accept the Jewish people on this land or their right on this land before I met people like you.
Thank you, Osama.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. Please, everyone, join us April 13th, 1:30 Eastern. The link to register is in the chat. We hope you'll be with us on that day, and we hope you will share with all of your friends and your community and your family to join us as well. Thank you, everybody. Goodbye.
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for
Bye.
the amazing webinar.
Thank you, Jerry.
Bye-bye.
And Christopher.
Thank you.
Thank you.